Our generation, we've taught our kids that they need to look better for social media. So evolution, look at when you guys grew up, how buff you guys were. Now look at kids now, look how skinny they are. A lot of them do qualify for testosterone. But you see a lot of kids, guys, that are really tall and skinny, and they look like they're 12 when they're 18, and then all these girls look like they're 14, and now they're 24. Right. Why is that? Women are scared that they're going to get on testosterone, they're going to get body hair, and they're going to sound like a man, and then they're going to be buff, and they're like, I don't want to do that, I want to be feminine. But that's not what testosterone does.
In a generation of one, your testosterone is associated with your manhood, so you don't check it, right? Yeah. And then two, if you take testosterone, you're cheating. Have you ever heard of the phrase roid rage?
Yeah.
I used to think it was because of the testosterone. It's not. It's because of the estrogen. Now let's look at a healthy ratio of testosterone and estrogen, because we rarely talk about estrogen in males, right? Can't sleep well, they have anxiety, they have depression, no libido, no erections, your clarity of thinking. Substances like opioids or meth or heroin, it turns off that feedback loop I was talking about. We're in a dominance hierarchy, and if you have two lobsters that fight and one loses, his behavior will change as if he dropped in the dominance hierarchy.
I don't see it as like a testosterone problem. You go into a doctor and you say, hey, I can't focus, right. I'm not thinking straight. Right. They're going to give you Adderall. They're going to give you some other substance, and they aren't going to treat the actual issue.
I think when we're talking about healthcare providers too, they're not really well equipped on knowing exactly what to do.
Depression rate, anxiety rate, suicide rate, we're not built.
You're not. And
for estrogen.
Usually give a woman on her period, how do we act?
Yeah.
You kind of act a little ragey. There's things that don't make sense. Husband's not happy with them because they look a certain way. It's all based on hormones and how you change it. If it can change your mood, why not do something and try it?
But I think of it this way. In order for men to feel loved, they need to be intimate. In order for women to be intimate, they need to feel loved. That's so opposite.
Scary. I want everybody to know about this testosterone clinic and what you guys can do for people, because there's a lot of people out there that have no idea why they're depressed or why they can't get out of bed, and they aren't motivated for life. All right, guys, welcome to the Davison Boys, episode number 5 now. It's our 5th episode.
One day we're going to be famous.
That's right. One day. We're still working our way up there. But we have special guests here today. We have Wes and Hayden, and you guys both work at AGELESS Men's Health.
Yes.
And what do you guys specialize in? What do you do?
Basically, if you're going to break it all down to a top level, it's hormone replacement for men and women.
Hormone replacement therapy, right?
Yes.
HRT.
Yep.
And then my dad's going to be a guest here as well. He's, pushing 59 years old?
I am 50.
Almost 60 years old. He's been working out with me since I was 12 years old.
He looks good.
He does he looks great, right? For almost 60?
Yeah.
But
he's
look
growing.
At this guy.
Thank you. But he's going to be joining us today. He loves everything motivational, fitness-wise. He loves learning about this stuff, so I thought I'd have him here to join us. But I kind of want to go back to you guys, so let's talk about testosterone. What is testosterone?
Okay, when we think of testosterone, we think of it as a male hormone. It's very prevalent in 2 distinct areas. When you're in a fetus, you have your chromosomes XY, XX, XY for male, but males are exposed mainly to testosterone, females to estrogen. And then during puberty, the growth phase, they get very high levels also. So it's a hormone that influences our development, our brain function, our prefrontal cortex. It's very, very important to differentiate. And
testosterone, it's a natural chemical in your body, natural hormone in your body.
You guys have probably heard of testosterone as a sterol or steroid. It's one of those categories, but yes, it's a hormone that's produced by males' testes, females in their supraadrenal gland, called diepiandrosterone. But
we'll get into that. Yeah,
we do produce a little bit in our ovaries too, just a little
teeny
bit.
Women
do. True.
So women and men both have this magical testosterone in their body. What does testosterone help with?
Development, male characteristics, and then in adolescence, during puberty, it modifies those things, right? It drives height, your growth, but also your secondary male characteristics, body hair, and even your behavior, right? It's very, very important. And it's what's been helping us evolve over billions of years. You know? Yeah. It's very, very important.
It pretty much helps us grow from a young age. So when we hit puberty, is that when testosterone's at its highest?
Yes. Yeah. You see, you look at these teenagers who have acne, but they're starting to develop hair all over their body, a little bit here, but secondary male characteristics. It drives us to compete. We're in a dominance hierarchy, but not in a negative way. You know, there's a very good podcast, and we'll refer back to this. It's called the Huberman Lab, and it was casted on August 30th of 2001 with Dr. Robert Sapolsky, and they talk about these developmental stages and the importance of testosterone, and people think of testosterone as this, you know, aggressive hormone, but it plays a role in stacking, you know, and being able to get along together, right?
And going back to what you just said with aggression,
Yeah.
every time I thought about testosterone growing up, I go to steroids.
Right.
Like, oh, steroids, bad.
That's bad.
I don't want to do testosterone.
Yeah. And there's a lot of recreational users out there. It's always going to be out there because it's really driven by the professional athletes, because you have to perform, you have to recover. And I'm not so worried about those guys. They have enough money. You look at Lance Armstrong. He had one of the most, you know, famous endocrinologists, Dr. Ferrari. It's the trickle-down effect where people try to do it on their own and try to understand it. And that's where you get into trouble, right?
But where's that line? So what's the difference between doing hormone replacement therapy or going to the gym and getting steroids from your local gym buddy? From Jim, that's right.
And you know, it's readily available through the dark web. And unfortunately, you know, you can get it from anywhere. But our bodies, if they're not, what would say, easy way to say it is broken, we have a feedback loop from our brain called the hypothalamus pituitary axis that sends hormones down to our testicles. One is called FSH. I remember fish like to swim. That tells you how much sperm to produce. And LH, luteinizing hormone, tells you how much testosterone to produce. And it's kind of like your thermostat and your furnace, right? It's called the negative feedback loop. So it's just like your furnace where it checks for the temperature. If it's too cold, it sends a signal down to the furnace, which is coincidentally in the basement, right? Once the thermostat detects that it's within range, it stops sending the signal. So there's a good balance between not only testosterone, we'll talk about estrogen importance, but it keeps this regulatory process where more isn't better, but you want to have enough to go to all the processes that need it. Now, what happens in, you know, recreational users is that they think more is better.
Well, bodybuilders, you hear about them, you know, they're so high.
Yeah.
Well, they have to develop those muscles like they do.
So they want the benefit of testosterone, and they push the level. So a normal male produces about 900 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone. Naturally, you know. And recreational users, they try to get in the 3,000 range.
Oh.
Yeah. And what happens is males don't produce estrogen. We convert testosterone to estrogen. Where adipose tissue or fat tissue, we call it fat tissue, and then more importantly in our brain. And what happens in the recreational users is you can take, it's called an aromatase inhibitor. That's what converts testosterone to estrogen. But if you have 3,000 nanograms per deciliter in your bloodstream, you can take all the aromatase inhibitor you want. And a lot of these guys, not everyone, there's always an exception to the rule, they're going to overproduce estrogen. And that's where a lot of the side effects come from.
Like gynecomastia, where you get guys
gynecomastia,
develop breast tissue.
The aggression.
So I did pro hormones fairly early on, and we got this stuff online. And I remember after I stopped taking it, I didn't do any PCT, I didn't do any estrogen blockers afterward, but I developed extra tissue in my breast, and it hurt, but I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to tell anybody that I was taking pro hormones to get better in the gym. But it really messed me up, and then I stopped functioning downstairs a little bit. It
can turn off that loop.
2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's where erectile dysfunction comes into place too.
Yeah.
With the hormones, playing with them.
So it can affect everything from thinking all the way down to like physical changes in your body.
Exactly. And what happens is if you take a a very high level of testosterone, it turns off that feedback loop. Our body sees it as, I'm getting all this testosterone, we say exogenously, meaning I have this testosterone, I don't need to produce any, right? So it turns off your own production. That's why they have to cycle on and off. So back to the estrogen. So who's the most, what population creates the most estrogen? It's women who are pregnant, right?
Okay.
They're in the 4,300 range.
They
right?
go up. Usually with trimesters, you can see it spikes like 600.
So what happens?
Pregnant women have the most estrogen.
Yes.
Say they get edema or swell.
Yeah, and so when women have their period, they kind of do this with their period.
Right.
So we can get rid of our estrogen by bleeding it out. You guys can't get rid of it. That's why you guys have to take the aromatase inhibitors.
Oh, that makes sense.
So have you
those
ever-
inhibitors will just block estrogen.
Yeah.
That's all it
So what happens in these recreational users, they get edema or swell, so they have to take a medication called a diuretic, which helps them pee off the extra fluid. That's why you hear them say I'm swole or puffy.
Oh,
But what's the biggest problem? Well, if you have that much estrogen circulating through your bloodstream, hitting your brain, have you ever heard of the phrase roid rage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to think it was because of the testosterone. It's not. It's because of the estrogen.
It's too high?
It's way too high.
Think of a woman on her period. How do we act?
Yeah.
Kind of act a little ragey.
Like
There's
a
things that don't
woman
make
nagging
sense.
you in your face all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, and like honestly, when we're on our period, nothing makes sense. We're just upset just to be upset, and it doesn't make sense. After we're like, oh, why were we so mad?
There's
about
no
it?
reason
Like, there's
with
no
you
reason
guys,
for it.
though.
No.
Yeah. So I got to tell you
No,
a
there
story.
really isn't.
I got to tell you a story.
Unless you're kind of equaled out. You know?
I got to tell you a cool story. So I'm always learning something because we're so complex as organisms. I had a guy come in. He was a physicist. He worked for NASA. I explained to him the whole premise of too much estrogen causing roid rage. And he turns to me and he said, that makes sense. During fetal development and during puberty, males don't express the estrogen receptor in our brain like women do. Mm-hmm. It works on our autonomic nervous system, the vagus nerve. And I'm going to look at him like, you're a physicist? And I went and I knew what he was saying. I looked it up and it's true. We don't have those estrogen receptors. So
Kind of elaborate on that, so they know what the vagus nerve is and stuff.
So basically, is this the best example? So if you put a male on, estrogen replacement therapy transition, if you look at their, they want the gynecomastia, right? Mm-hmm. They're in very high levels. And they want, to have female characteristics. But the problem is, if you look at their depression rate, anxiety rate, suicide rate, we're not built
You're not. And
for estrogen.
Usually when you look at signs and symptoms of high estrogen and low estrogen, signs and symptoms of anxiety and depression can kind of go both ways. Usually when it's lower, it can kind of be a little bit. When it's higher, you're just kind of irritable, you have anxiety. Right. Sometimes the pills can cause that though too, I've seen. Right. So it just depends on what you're taking.
So going like with the transgender people, so if, say you're an 18-year-old kid wants to become who he feels like, he wants to transition, that doesn't sound safe.
Well, and everybody's a
mentally
little bit
for them.
different. And if you look at the statistics, and I don't want to, sound negative, but if you look at the statistics, it's probably not the healthiest things. Now let's look at a healthy ratio of testosterone and estrogen, because we rarely talk about estrogen in males, right? Mm-hmm. And we look for a ratio of 20 to 1, 20 testosterone to 1 estrogen. We like to see guys about 800 in a trough on testosterone, but their estrogen, 25 to 35, we use a different denominator, picograms per deciliter. And in that range, testosterone and estrogen work on the male brain in a space called the amygdala. And that's what I love about this podcast by Huberman, is they talk about how it amplifies your personality. It doesn't make you angry, it doesn't make you weak, but it amplifies your motivation, your concentration.
Serotonin levels too.
Serotonin levels. And he said something really interesting that just really kind of put it into perspective. He said, if you give it to a monastery of Buddhist monks, it will enhance their desire to enact more benevolent acts of kindness.
That is wild.
That's wild. And we see a lot of guys. So if you think of the extreme cases, so our military guys, there's another podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience, number 1056. This is where I got the first insight. He has Dr. Mark Gordon and a ex-Army Ranger named Andrew Marr. And Andrew had retired from the military and started having panic attacks. Never had panic attacks before. He's this badass, ex-Army Ranger. And luckily he found this this doctor, Mark Gordon, out of California, who treats traumatic brain injury, PTSD, anxiety, depression. Head trauma is a major indication for low testosterone. Why? Because you're dinging up the control center. And I have lots of guys, I look out for them, ex-military, bull riders, right? Another thing is
Boxers.
Perfect.
NFL players, football players,
They're doing a
concussions.
study, They're doing a study right now in the NFL. And then another broad range of people are people who've been, addicted to certain substances like opioids or meth or heroin. It turns up that feedback loop I was talking about. And when you test them, you kind of anticipate this, but they become, they shut that off. And I've seen guys as low as 90. And
Normal range is 900, you said?
Yeah, and they're 90. So they can't sleep well. They have anxiety. They have depression, and what heals the brain. So this,
While we're on this topic,
Yeah.
real quick, what are the biggest side effects of having a low testosterone?
are those. You can't sleep, no libido, no erections, your clarity of thinking.
When you have a foggy thinking, you don't see it as like a testosterone problem. You go into a doctor and you say, hey, I can't focus. I'm not thinking straight.
Right.
They're going to give you Adderall. They're going to give you some other substance, and they aren't going to treat the actual issue.
They don't look for the underlying problem is because the problem with giving somebody testosterone, if you give them, and I think I said this before, if you give them high enough amounts, their body sees it and goes, I don't need to produce anything. So the way that we get around that is we not only give, if it's appropriate to give somebody testosterone, we give another hormone called HCG, human chorionic gonadotrophin. It's not growth hormone, but it mimics those hormones I talked about coming down, LH and FSH. So while you're on testosterone, you keep producing sperm and you keep producing testosterone, because if you ever have to stop it, you don't want to be worse off, right? That's the biggest hurdle we're trying to overcome, or problem we're trying to overcome. And if I didn't have that tool, I wouldn't treat younger guys. Because even if they had the best therapeutic response, they're sleeping better concentration, more energy. If I turn something off and it's turned off permanently, then that's not a good thing, right? So that's an important tool.
No. And I think when we're talking about healthcare providers too, they're not really well equipped on knowing exactly what to do.
not
They don't
educated.
understand it. So they just think, oh, we're going to give you this dose. It's the same dose for everyone. Let's see how you do. We'll see you in a couple months. There you go. A lot of guys come to us and we see that their estrogen's high, their testosterone's low, which obviously they're just converting more into estrogen, and they're not being watched with their hemoglobin either.
But now they're addicted to these medications they probably don't even need.
Are you talking like testosterone?
No, like if you go to the doctor and they give you an Adderall, they give you
Yeah.
Or
antidepressants, and
Yeah.
that's just going to jack you up even more.
well, it can help you, but you're not treating the underlying cause.
Yeah.
No, and there's some people that are
apparently those
undiagnosed.
old school bodybuilders that took all these tests. Well, they do it nowadays.
Yeah, they do it now.
So are they taking that drug you're talking about that counteracts that?
Some of them are, but if you take enough testosterone in high enough amounts, you could take anything you want, but it's going to shut it off because you're in the 3,000 range.
You're too far up.
You're too far up. And there's always an exception to rule. But most guys, that's why they cycle on and off. Why would you cycle on and off if...
That was another question
Yeah.
I had.
Yeah.
So, why do they cycle on and off?
Well, one, because their estrogen gets so high.
They don't know what's wrong with them.
Two, they don't want to shut off their own production of testosterone and sperm. So they go in these short spurts, really high testosterone, but it dries up their estrogen. And they're taking other things also. And then they try to cycle off so they can get back, to have their body producing testosterone and sperm, and their estrogen comes down. But it's a roller coaster, right? It's not what our bodies are built
So
for.
with the therapy that you promote or do, you keep us in the normal range.
Right.
And so therefore we don't have to cycle.
Right, exactly. One, we're giving you the HCG so you don't turn off your own production. We're giving you testosterone. How much is being converted to estrogen, right? You want the right ranges.
That's why we draw labs so frequently too.
Now, here's another important point. You guys have heard of testosterone referred to as a sterol or steroid.
Yeah.
All that is a fancy chemistry way to say it's built on a cholesterol backbone, which means it can't be transported or distributed efficiently in your bloodstream because our bloodstream's mainly made up of water or serum. So our liver produces two proteins that are important in the carrying of testosterone. One is called albumin, and it does a number of important things, but it carries testosterone around in your body, and it can be used by different tissues that need it, okay? The other one's called SHBG, or sex hormone binding globulin. And the reason why they call it a binding globulin is because once it's bound to testosterone, you can't use it. And my first question in my mind when I read about that was, why is our body building this binding globulin? It's counterproductive. We don't know. Women produce more of it than males. They produce less testosterone than males. I don't know if it's an evolutionary thing. It doesn't matter. But if you look at your total serum testosterone, it's a combination of both your free testosterone, or they also call it your bioavailable testosterone, and your bound testosterone. So that's another important thing to look at.
What's the difference between the free and the bound?
The bound, you can't use it. The free, you can. So here's a perfect example. Not everybody who comes in our clinic, if we draw their blood, they come back with a low total serum testosterone, but they might have symptoms. Why? Because they have a low free testosterone.
How do you fix that?
Okay, so the good news about this patient is they're not having a problem producing testosterone. There's a supplement called DHEA, or dihydroepiandrosterone. You can buy it at GNC, Good Earth. And on the bottle it says, raises your testosterone. Really what it does is it knocks some of that testosterone off the binding globulin so you could use it.
Oh.
Now, if somebody comes back...
Freeze it up.
It frees it up. So if you give it to somebody who's at 300, it's not going to help them much, right? But if you give it to somebody at 800, it will. Now, another important thing is testosterone and estrogen work on some things that are primed for it, meaning they're ready for it. And then it's a biomolecular key because it's a hormone, both testosterone and estrogen. So usually when you put somebody on testosterone, they start to sleep better, more energy, resilience to stress, morning erections, libido, and women too, except the morning erections, obviously. But, and then after about a month, they start to recover more. And then another month beyond that, they start to get stronger because what happens is, for example, inside your muscle tissue, we have a receptor inside the muscle tissue for testosterone. And if it sequesters or grabs that testosterone, it can go through the cell membrane and attach to that receptor inside our muscle. So that means that's like a gas tank, right? One of the things it does, it divides, they call them satellite cells. And satellite cells are kind of like stem cells. So there's a paper we can post and give a reference to it. It's called The Mechanism of Action of Testosterone on the Skeletal Muscle and Why It's Banned in the Olympics. But it goes and repair things. And then if you remember from biology, we have multiple nuclei in our skeletal muscle because they're so they're very active, right? And it goes into the genetic information and it says produce more proteins to do what? Thicken your muscle fibers. Well, how many muscle fibers do you have? So that's
millions, right?
Yeah, that's why you don't feel it in a week. You feel it in like 2 months because you're building the molecular machinery, and how much you're producing and how much you're using. It's a dynamic system. It changes. Like Hayden was saying, we don't keep somebody on the same dose because normally that feedback loop we're talking about will create more or less. Well, we can do that through labs and how you feel and get the best response because that's how your body works. We mimic your own body's feedback loop.
And sometimes you're going to need more. Sometimes you're going to need less depending on your physical activity.
Right.
So that's why you guys draw labs every 4 weeks, right?
Yeah. And for example, if you're recovering from surgery or you're going through a pandemic or you just lost your bit or whatever, right? You're going to use more because you're more stressed and that's your body, if it's not broken, will augment for that. Well, we can artificially do that.
So bodybuilders need more to recover.
Well, yes, and they're using a lot more testosterone. That's why they get the, hypertrophy but
He's talking testicular hypertrophy too. So that's why your balls shrink.
Yeah. And that's why you give us that other drug to counteract that.
Exactly.
And HCG can also help with that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we have lots of guys. So here's the crux of the situation. We have lots of guys who've never had kids. They want to have kids in the future. And the way you can do certain lab tests like semen analysis, you could tell how they're reacting. But if you keep them on the HCG and either raise it or decrease the testosterone, I've never had anybody having a hard time conceiving if they haven't been on high doses before. That's something I take seriously, right?
You do.
Yeah.
So do people come to you if they can't have kids, if they're like struggling with having kids?
Well, sometimes in some cases, guys, they've been trying to get their wife pregnant for years and their testosterone is so low and their estrogen is so low, and they get on testosterone and HCG, they get their wives pregnant, right?
Really?
Yeah.
How quickly does it
Well,
take to
I mean,
work?
we could
It's
go.
kind of based on your body, but it's kind of like women getting off of birth control. It takes about 6 months to be safe, and then it can kind of go from there, just depending on.
Yeah.
So you're changing lives every day.
Oh yeah, that's why I love my job.
How old would you recommend somebody getting their levels checked?
You can never look, and a lot of doctors won't treat somebody, or even check somebody under 20. We've had dads bringing their sons, right? Dad's 50, son's 18. And you look at them and you think, oh, I don't know. But they have all the signs and symptoms and they come back low, right? And they're kind of depressed. They're not motivated. And you get their levels back in balance and it just improves their quality of life.
Okay, question for you, because I kind of already know the answer, but I want you to answer this. So evolution, look at when you guys grew up, how buff you guys were. Now look at kids now. Look how skinny they are. A lot of them do qualify for testosterone.
Either skinny or fat.
Exactly. But you see a lot of kids, guys, that are really tall and skinny, and they look like they're 12 when they're 18. And then all these girls look like they're, 14, and now they're 24.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, there's lots of factors. One is genetics.
Okay.
2 is stress.
Okay.
3 is inactivity. 4 is nutrition.
Okay.
Right.
So do you think these boys are not doing anything wrong? It's just how they're.
Well, I think
Playing video games all day.
yeah.
True.
That
It's true.
plays- that plays
But it's
a
just
role.
weird to look at them. They're just not very, buff and muscular. When I was in high school, every guy was
Why
huge,
do
I felt
girls look older?
Well,
goes
makeup.
Yeah, makeup.
like. Makeup, true. But I mean,
they're
you know.
smart.
Even
They're
physically,
smarter.
They're starting to look older at a younger age.
They're smarter, 1. 2, they take care of themselves a lot more than boys do. Right?
In our generation, I'm not going to say anything, but our generation, we've taught our kids that they need to look better for social media. That's another thing too.
And our food isn't the same. Our nutrition isn't the same. You see women or girls becoming, hitting their menstrual cycles a lot earlier. There's a lot of factors.
There's a lot of factors too, because all the meats we eat have hormones in them too that can affect your pituitary gland as well. Yeah. I've read that.
Wait, what was that last part you said?
It can affect your pituitary gland. All your antibiotics that you're eating in your meats, it can affect your pituitary and your ovaries. Women get PCOS a lot too, more frequently, I feel like.
What's PCOS?
Right, polycystic ovarian syndrome.
What does that mean?
Well, it just is a scarring of your uterus. So usually women are really high in testosterone when they have that. And they bleed and bleed and bleed. Like, there's some people that bleed and they get headaches and they're fine. There's some people that can't even get up for a week. So it just depends. They put them on a pill and they're like, hey, here's birth control. See ya.
Can you guys fix that as well?
Not for women.
We send them to our
Yeah, they have to go see them because they're too high in testosterone, so we can't give them anything.
Okay.
Because then you're just going to kind of.
And let's not talk about bleeding anymore.
Oh my gosh.
We're getting queasy.
A woman bodybuilder. She takes a lot more tests. Does that
She's on guys' doses.
They are on guys' doses and they do not have periods.
They don't have periods.
messes them up? So
They have a lot more acne. Our vocal folds are partly muscle, so they get a deeper voice. It more hair. It doesn't create more body hair. It thickens the hair.
it's creating a man.
Basically, yes. And usually if women are on high doses for a long time, just like how men are changing into women, women changing into men, the clit can actually grow a little bit and it can grow this much. They call it the small penis. So if you really want to look it up, it literally will show. And that's how they can kind of transform a little bit quicker.
Wes, are you sweating over here?
Don't keep that, don't put that in your browsing history.
You know what? I looked at it because
it's
I was
true.
very
It's true.
curious
It's
about
true.
it. Yeah,
And-
because women are scared that they're going to get on testosterone, they're going to get body hair, and they're going to sound like a man, and then they're going to be buff, and they're like, I don't want to do that. I want to be feminine. But that's not what testosterone does.
But for transgenders,
Yeah,
they
for sure.
could come in and that's
Yeah.
what they're looking for.
Yeah,
They
there-
wanna-
and there are treatment centers for that they're experts in that.
They need to be monitored more closely than what
Okay.
we can do
That's
for
way
them.
more complicated.
There's more hormones that go into that.
Now, is there good foods that we can eat that will help build that testosterone up
It's
naturally?
true. Yeah. So I had one of my patients, he owned a nutrition company, and he came back about 300 on his total serum testosterone. He goes, I want to do a test. I want to see what can I do to increase my testosterone health, right? And if you know the underlying mechanism, it's kind of cool because I followed him and we did his tests again. One, it was a Tim Ferriss, I can't remember the name of the book, like 5-hour work week or workout week or something. Tim Ferriss is brilliant because he does a lot of, and I'm not pushing his book, but it was kind of cool. One, he ate cashews morning and night. Why cashews? If cholesterol is the precursor of testosterone, you have to have enough to be converted, right?
And cholesterol's a fat. So testosterone's basically like a fatty lipid.
Right.
Basically.
Right. So you need to have enough.
Cashews have a lot of fat in them.
Right.
Yes.
It's the right kind of cholesterol, right? 2, exercise, right? Because you want to utilize the testosterone to tell your body to create more. Sleep. We underutilize sleep a lot, but that's where our memories are formed, memory consolidation, rest, whatever, right? Cayenne pepper. Now, I looked this up. I was like, why cayenne pepper? Well, if you guys have taken pre-workout or heard of nitrous oxide, it's a vasodilator.
Dilates the...
Right, which increases blood flow, which increases, movement. So that was pretty cool that he was doing those things, and he didn't know why, but it was kind of cool. He came up to like 375. So he's able to increase his total serum testosterone. And you got to remember this
From
is
3 to 375.
Yeah. And then he goes, okay.
It's a 75 increase, right?
Yeah,
Good.
but this is the cool thing is like not everybody wants to. We grew up during the generation of 1, your testosterone is associated with your manhood, so you don't check it, right? And 2, if you
I'm
take
good.
yeah,
Look at me.
yeah, and then 2, if you take testosterone, you're cheating, right?
That's the big
You're
one, yeah.
cheating.
Yeah.
That's how it's looked because there's a lot of recreational users, especially professional athletes. But when you sit down and analyze it, you want to increase somebody's quality of life, not only physically but mentally. So a question I had. So about 7 years ago, when I was tested, I only heard negative things. I did allergy and asthma for 10 years, and I go, I'm not going on this. Fast forward, here we are, right? My first question is it safe? Right? Are there any short or long
time. I
term
wanna know if it's safe.
side effects?
Yeah.
2, what's the therapeutic value and how does it work like at a molecular level, like a coding level? And then 3, do you have to be on for the rest of your life? Okay, here's something cool. So out of our 54 clinics, we treated about 14,000, mostly males, a lot of females last week. So that's a good data set, right? That's a good set of data to go, 1, are we having problems? Are we getting side effects? 2, are we getting a good therapeutic response? Are we seeing better sleep? Are we seeing, better concentration, more energy during the day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And then 3, how many of those guys are going to be on for the rest of your lives? Now you can be, but there's 2 things that are important or true. 1, you're trading your time and your money to come. Mm-hmm. I was a patient for 2 years before I worked there. They didn't take my insurance. I was trading something else for this. 2, things happen in life. The guy who lost all of his businesses during the pandemic, he's going to have to give something up. So the cool thing is, if you moving forward on testosterone, if you have some goals, if you're improving your physical health by doing what? Building the molecular machinery. Remember we talked about thickening of the muscle fibers and repairing, right? That's your building something. And then you're able to change your habits. What are your habits? Sleeping, eating, workout habits. Mm-hmm. Why do they call them habits? Because you're wiring them in your brain, right? And a lot of things in medicine are what's termed anecdotal. I think they work this way because it makes sense. Well, you have to have studies to parse that out, meaning double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. They had there was a study I read, and I'll have to find it. I'll give you the reference. They put 62-year-olds on testosterone and followed them for a year. They were able to gain lean muscle mass. They took them off, followed them for another year. They were able to maintain it. So if you ever have
Even
to go
taking them off testosterone, they're maintaining it.
Yes. So once you build it, it's easier to maintain than it is to come here to here.
Wild. Okay.
So how are they maintaining it? Are their levels staying?
Well, no, their
Staying?
levels go back down.
They go back down.
But if
But the body learns itself.
yeah, it learns. It has a memory. because you built those proteins to thicken your muscle fibers. You form those habits. Now, if you go back to your old ways, because a lot of times what happens is, you get married, you have kids, you get a job, and what's the first thing to go? Your physical health, right? And it didn't happen in a day, right? They said the dad bod, right? The dad bod.
Yeah. Hey, dad bods are in, okay?
Well, you decide.
Some people, I'm not going to say who, but some people like it.
Well, they get lazy too.
Right. But it didn't happen in a day, right? But once you get healthy and you continue those habits, then you're good. So if you look at, a good example is if you look at these tribes that they go and visit, they don't have any outside influence. Now, their lifespan isn't as long because they don't have antibiotics, they don't have, surgeries. But what do the 50-year-olds look like? They're badass, right? They're fit.
They're out in the jungle with a spear.
Right. And they have a purpose, right? They're
Survival of the
teaching.
fittest,
They have purpose. They have meaning. Why? Because they're leading the tribe. And then they move every single day. They move, they hunt, they gather.
Go figure. They have to get off that couch.
They have to get out, or they're not going to eat.
Yeah.
And what happens to the guy in a tribe who doesn't contribute? Oh, let's go on a hunting trip. Oh, he fell off a cliff. If he's not contributing, right?
Exactly.
And eventually,
See ya. See ya.
Yeah.
That is wild. So that they're naturally having more testosterone because they have more meaning in life?
I think because they keep moving, they don't have the processed food. Look at all the processed food.
And the serenitary lifestyle.
Right.
They're not sitting around.
They don't have purpose and meaning. If you're playing video games all day, do you have purpose or meaning? And that's what I love about our job, is that we enhance people's quality of life. And not only the physical piece, but we sit down with the patients, and if they're, everybody's going through something at some point. Maybe not today. It's not my turn, but today's your turn. And we're built as a tribe to help each other out and work through these problems. And the cool thing is, when I'm going through my stuff, I hear those conversations, right? We enhance our ability to be more resilient to stress. I have 3 boys, 20, 17, and 11. 11-year-old still loves me. I'm 51 this year, so I see things in a different perspective. And the great thing about Hayden is she sees it from another perspective, and she can connect with people that I can't.
Yeah.
That's
Very
the
talkative.
cool part.
So can you guys gauge where someone's at mentally when they come into your office after they've been on therapy for 6 weeks?
Yes.
How do you
It's
gauge-
about the conversations you have with them too, because some guys don't want to admit certain things. And even to me, I've had to be like, listen, I've heard it all. You can tell me whatever you want. And just having those conversations, they'll open up about things, about their lives, about what they're going through. And I'm like, okay, so checkpoint. Is anything else going on? Are you feeling depressed? Or are you having anxiety? They keep going. You kind of have to have those conversations.
Right.
You have to
And gain
know
their
them
trust.
too and gain their trust. Once you have that, they'll tell you anything. Yeah. So if I see that there's so many things that I've looked at and I'm like, okay, we need to check this, and this, see what's going on with it.
Yeah.
And usually 90% of the time I'm right.
And we grew up during the time you suck it up. You don't admit you're weak.
Yeah.
That's okay in a foxhole, right? Yeah. But we can have a much better life by, helping each other. When I go through an evaluation, I sit down with each patient. Things I ask are, how's your stress level, right? What are you up against? What's going on? Whether it's divorce or you're a business owner, whether it's positive or negative. How's your sleep? Because those things affect. Because in medicine, we want to focus on just the physical, right? We want to fix the physical, but you have to work on what's going on in their life. What's their purpose? What's their meaning?
If I got depressed, I'm not going to think, oh, I'm low on testosterone. I'm going to think I need to go get on antidepressants.
Right, exactly.
So this is scary. I want everybody to know about this testosterone clinic and what you guys can do for people, because there's a lot of people out there that have no idea why they're depressed or why they can't get out of bed, and they aren't motivated for life.
And some guys do know. Like, they'll come in and get checked. There's a guy that did come in, and his wife told him that he couldn't take it, even though he was low. So she didn't want the sex drive or anything, but she didn't think anything was wrong with her.
I don't
either.
want him on me.
So it's you kind of have to see it from both sides of the spectrum. Yeah. Wives, spouses, they sometimes see a different light and they're like, no, that's not you. You're fine. You're good. And then they think in their head that they're okay. So then they think, okay, I just need to go on antidepressants. Like, I don't need to go and see a hormone clinic. That's why. Usually you go to the doctor, they put you on something. That's why you need to see a specialist. You need to look and you need to, don't go to Dr. Google, but if you think that there's an issue, go look for it. You're never going to find anything. If you think you have cancer, you're going to go get it scanned, or you're just going to wait on it.
Well, antidepressants, that will help you for the meantime, right? Like they're going to feel
Yeah.
happier, but is it fixing the problem?
Some people, there's multiple layers, right? And we get these blinders on sometimes. Testosterone will fix everything. The cool thing about men coming in and women is they generally don't see their doctor unless there's a problem, right? So this is our opportunity to look at things like sleep apnea, true depression because of, some organic or genetic problem. Yes, their testosterone. What is their activity level, So it's an opportunity to look at all the layers. We kind of try to break them down. We have a very, AGELESS Men's Health has been around for almost 15 years now. And they've been through this so many times. And the cool thing is we use that to help look at multiple areas, right? And it might be both. You might need both. We don't prescribe antidepressants, but it might be a piece of the puzzle. I've had a lot of therapists and psychologists send their patients over, to find the underlying cause.
Because sometimes it's a brain mechanic, and it's the chemicals in your brain. You can't really, you need antidepressants. You need testosterone. You might need both of them. Sometimes it's maybe you just need testosterone. Yeah. You never know.
Yeah. And for anytime you look at any therapy, what Hayden was alluding to is there's always a benefit and always a risk or side effect. So you want the benefit to outweigh any risk or side effect. So a lot of times guys, when they go on a antidepressant, they call them SSRIs or serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They actually get problems with climaxing or ejaculation or, stuff like that. So you kind of have to weigh both, and we're very complex organisms. Jordan Peterson, he's a very prominent psychologist, and he uses this example, which I think is pretty profound. If you look at lobsters, okay, they're in a dominance hierarchy, right? Mm-hmm. We're in a dominance hierarchy. And if you have two lobsters that fight and one loses, his behavior will change as if he dropped in the dominance hierarchy. You give him an antidepressant like an SSRI, his behavior changes back.
No kidding.
What does that tell you? We're complex. It doesn't always work.
And not every person's the same.
No, we're very complex. And we could spend hours and hours talking about that. The fact that it ever works amazes me.
Well, I think our brain has a lot to do with it. So getting Tanner, he was on antidepressants for a while. And then he got on some other things, and because he saw other people on it, well, I must be that way. So he's thinking he is that way. And then he's going like, well, now I'm not functioning right. I don't like the way I'm feeling. I'm not happy now. I'm not really sad, but I like my happy times. And so go ahead and tell him, Tanner, you kind of got off of it.
Yeah, so I went to go see, it was after I went on a mission for the church, and I went to Brazil. I lost feeling in the whole right side of my body, just shut down. But I came back to Seattle and did some rehabilitation, and eventually I was able to walk and talk again like I am now.
What happened to your body?
I had a virus that attached to my nervous system and my spinal cord in the back, and it just shut me down. I really don't know exactly much about it.
Wow.
They were all speaking Portuguese the whole time when I came back to the States.
I was like scared as heck. I mean, he's like paralyzed.
But I went through this depression phase afterward, and I was like, well, my family loves to talk about emotional, mental health, and they always think that we have these problems. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'm depressed. And so I went to go see a psychologist. He literally talked to me for, who's the ones that can prescribe medication? Is
Psychiatrist.
That a psychiatrist? Mm-hmm. He talked to me for 5 minutes. I told him my life story, and he's like, oh, you have bipolar, you're depressed, and all this. And he gave me all this medication, and I started taking it, and I got really depressed, and it was scary. It was like a zombie feeling where you don't really feel happy or
you're
sad.
Numb.
You're numb. And so I was like, this isn't for me. He doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know what I have. So I stopped taking all the medication. 2 months later, I felt fine again. And I just started having my mental habits. I noticed were always going through negative thoughts. And I just switched that and started thinking positively. And it really made a huge impact. But then again, my testosterone level's been low this entire time. And we got this checked out, a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And I was at 200, 270, something like that.
And how old are you?
26.
26.
So I was really low. And after doing this for just even 12 weeks now, I feel 100% better.
And I've seen him improve 300% in the gym And his attitude, he talks now. It's like, I used to go to the gym and I'd look at him like, is he in a good mood or a bad mood? Do I say anything? No.
It wasn't that bad. It was.
I mean, it's your dad.
I wouldn't want to talk. I wouldn't want to like go interact with people. When I was tired all the time, I'd have to go home and just go straight to bed. I wouldn't want to go out and do anything. But after taking this stuff, I feel totally different. I sleep really well. My motivation for life's a lot better. I started this podcast. I mean, things are.
That blew me away.
Yeah, everything's
Tanner
changing.
Doesn't even like to talk to me. He's going to do a podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's made a big impact. So I love you guys. You guys are like, I want people to know about this because it's not all just about medications that the doctors can give you. I feel like there's more underlying.
Yeah, we really have to get back to serving our patients, having that meaning we were talking about, having that purpose, and this gives us that opportunity.
And I think we connect with our patients too. It's not just like, hey, come and get your shot, see you later. I think we connect with all of them pretty well. And we are, I mean, I'll be honest, some guys will come in and like, I feel like I should be this, this, and this, and I should feel like a 17-year-old boy. And you have to kind of talk to him. It's not a fix-all drug. It's kind of helps you go up. It's not just going to make you a teenager again. And you kind of have those conversations with them.
Who wants to be a teenager?
There's a bunch of guys that are like, I don't feel it. I don't feel it. And sometimes I just say, if you don't feel anything, if you're not sleeping good, if you feel like, your energy's not better or your libido's not better, your mood's not better, go off of it for 2 weeks. See how you feel.
Exactly.
And then they do. 98% of them come right back.
Well, I went to the clinic, got my first shot, and also that little other booster
lipo?
shot.
Yeah.
Got to the gym. I'm working out. We're doing some heavy arms, on the preacher curl.
And he didn't take pre-workout this time.
Show that to them.
Yeah, show that to the camera. 60 years old, guys.
59.
Sorry.
Hold on.
I'm going to Tanner. I just feel like there's like new oil in me. I don't know what this is.
He said, I thought I got an oil change. It was his first shot, too, like right after it happened.
Yeah, and some guys do react like right away. I used to think it was placebo, but that goes back to what we were talking before. We're so different, biologically, that I do believe that happens.
And that's why doses are made for you personally. Like some guys will come in, will take 240 a week. Some guys only need to take 120. It's not going to be 200, here you go, see you later. You guys all have a trough level. And that's kind of what we're aiming for. So you guys feel good at the same level, but you're on your own dose.
Yep.
Yeah. So cater to each person.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's personal. Yeah.
I love it so far. You guys are doing miracle work. And you kind of tell them like what you did before. So you were in allergy. You were working like specialized in allergy, and you switched over because you saw the impact it was having.
Well, yeah. I before I decided to work there, because I was by dumb luck hired by these allergists, which these guys are brilliant. And they really work, it's immunological, it's like a molecular level, right? And they broke everything down and they trained me. So they taught me how to think. Like, there's different therapies that have different therapeutic value. There's something called the number needed to treat. So something like Zyrtec for allergies, you take it, and if you treat 10 people, you'll start seeing a positive result. And that's considered really good, right? And then there's some things like, they call them biologics. We clone antibodies. We were doing venom immunotherapy, pollen immunotherapy. That had a much higher therapeutic value. And then we do things like clone antibodies. Like we clone these antibodies that work on a certain pathway, and those even have a higher therapeutic value or number needed to treat. But the problem is the cost. Some of these shots were like $3,000 a month.
Because literally the immune
Just
system
so
is
I don't
so
sneeze.
vast. Yeah.
3,000. And the thing I love about testosterone and what I had to find out is, one, is it safe? Two, does it have a significant therapeutic response? And do people have access to it, right? Because I don't have $3,000 a month to pay for a shot, right?
No.
So it has a significant therapeutic response. And the other important thing is, I rely on, there's some misconceptions like testosterone has a association with prostate problems. How do I know it doesn't? I rely on the urologist. That's what he does every single day. But we have to ask ourselves, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, is it still safe? Have we learned something new? Cardiologist, I have a guy with a congestive heart failure, or he has congestive heart failure. Did I decide to put him on testosterone? No. But why did the cardiologist do it? If you're healthier, your heart doesn't have to work as hard. Plus, that patient is more vulnerable to any of these side effects you read about. Plus, I relied on a tribe of doctors who were brilliant to go, we got to work together to analyze this to still know that the the benefit way outweighs the risk. And we have to update ourselves continually.
So do you guys work with people's doctors as well?
Oh yeah. So, guys who've had, prostate problems or heart attacks or blood clots, or, we send them to the relative specialist, hematologist. I've sent a bunch of guys to the hematologist.
And the hematologist is?
An oncologist. They study the blood, and then cardiologist, and then urologist, and then their primary care. Right.
Cool.
So all the labs that we draw, we kind of see where your levels are. If we see a spike in one of them, we send them to one of those and we get them cleared before they come back.
Or if
so
they
we
have
don't
the
discard
past-
them.
So look what the difference is. Go on the internet, go on the black market, grab some steroids, but you're not getting the blood test. You're not getting all this. You're not knowing what's going on. And so you could freaking hurt yourself.
Yeah, but some of those guys are convincing. They're like, oh, I've been doing this for years.
Yeah, and you and I have both seen guys that are on this stuff, and man, they look great. They're doing good, and then a month later, you're looking at them like, what happened to them?
They just deflate.
They
And
just
it's,
yeah.
I can kind of vouch for that. So my little brother, he used to do some of that stuff, and he's come in. I mean, he said I could talk about this too. He noticed that even with not like he's on testosterone, he feels good. He's lifting, he's getting the muscle definition, but when he comes off of it, he feels down. Like he's insecure. He has body dysmorphia. He looks in the mirror and he goes, okay, do I need to do more? And he's kind of messed his body up. We tested him. He was within normal limits, but now he's having other issues. That's why it's really important not to just go and take a shot. So now I have to ask him every day, how are you feeling? Are you feeling like you're depressed? Are you okay? What's going on? We had to have those like honest conversations with each other because it goes up and down so much. And that's why pellets do too. Pellets aren't really great. You can talk about them if you want to, but they do the same thing.
What
They
are
insert so
pellets?
much. So they insert in the back of your butt. They do a little cut, put some in, and it can raise your testosterone way up.
It's basically long release.
It's
Is this
yeah.
medical or is this like?
It's medical, yeah. So they put it in, just depending on. I mean, they did it for my dad, and they put like, I think it was 9 pellets in there. He went all the way up. They didn't monitor him, and then all of a sudden, 3 months later, he's crashed down. Well, it's supposed to last for 6 months. You can't get more until 6 months, so you're screwed for that 3 months.
That doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand.
And I can say that because I've watched it too, and that's why he went to AGELESS Men's Health, because I'm like, you can't keep doing this. His estrogen was high. I didn't know it at the time because I didn't work here, but he was an asshole. Asshole. My mom was like ready to divorce him.
Is
like,
he
he's been
doing a lot
trying.
better
Oh
now?
yeah, he's great. Great.
That's why I was never tempted to go do this stuff, because I just didn't like this. I want something longevity.
Right.
I don't want to be looking for a month and then die of a kidney
And even
disease.
just the mental clarity, like it's going to be huge for you, especially because you're older. You're brain fogged a little bit.
No.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I've noticed a huge difference in my dad too, though. Like he is definitely different than he was when he was on pellets, and I can tell he acts like a little kid. He thinks he's hilarious. Like literally, he thinks.
you sound just like Tanner.
Like he is funny, but like I just see more like playfulness in him. And when you think like of our, when we look at parents of other people, their parents are just like, meh, hey, what's up? So I just see that life in him, and I think testosterone works really well.
It's amazing when you're lacking something, you give it to him. Oh, I'm feeling
And honestly, I would never give my dad something I didn't trust in either.
Of course, yeah.
So that's why I worked here. I went through it. I listened to Wes. He educated me. I mean, I learned something new every day. I always walk in his office and I'm like, what is this?
Me too. We teach
Yeah,
each
we teach each other
You guys
stuff.
both know a lot about steroids.
Yeah.
You had that whole book in your office about steroids, and that's what I was like. Oh, he knows what I was taking before. It wasn't steroid, the SARMs.
SARMs, peptides,
Yeah.
HCG,
Antidepressants and all that
all
stuff.
that. And that's a whole other category where you have to be careful because there's not a lot of good data to know, does it have a short-term benefit and does it have long-term benefits, right? Or detriments. Because if you show up at the hospital and you're taking SARMs or peptides, you're not going to tell them you're on it. You get a blood clot or whatever happens, they're not going to correlate that. Human growth hormone. So a lot of people ask, what about human growth hormone? I get that a lot because
What about human growth
yeah.
hormone?
So there's benefits and risks to that. If you know,
He
so
took all mine.
yeah.
Did you?
No, we
No.
never actually had human
know.
growth hormone.
No.
So the human growth hormone.
Yeah.
So that's what helps you. If you look at the extreme Andre the Giant, he had something called acromegaly. The place in his pituitary gland overproduced human growth hormone. That's why he grew and grew. Before he hit puberty, his epiphyseal plates, when they say your growth plates haven't closed. Now they go in through your nose, through your cribriform plate, and take it out because what happened to him? He grew and grew and grew, and then physics of breathing and walking and all that. So so they used to have to get it from the pituitary gland of cadavers because they couldn't synthesize it because the molecule is so complex. And it's used for certain things like certain types of dwarfism. I had a patient who was on it, cost $20,000 a month. So it's really, really, really expensive.
That's HGH?
Human growth hormone, yeah.
The pure form of it,
For,
yeah.
for
Apparently their insurance was covering
dwarfism,
that.
yeah, for dwarfism. Now, some guys take it. The problem is, so we have cells that are repairing, reproducing all the time. We have a cell in our bone marrow called the hematopoietic cell. It can become a red blood cell, a thrombocyte, they call them platelets, a neutrophil, basophil, eosinophil, or macrophage. It can become these very different things. And if you remember from biology, if a cell is programmed to develop and mature into, let's say, a red blood cell, we check it along kind of an assembly line. And if a cell at a certain point in a group of cells is getting out of hand, we have multiple mechanisms to destroy it. The problem with their human growth hormone, it doesn't know the difference between a muscle cell and the cell we're going to get rid of. And a perfect example, I don't know if you remember who Lyle Zadel was, but he was a football player. He was a strong man. This is back in, I can't remember what year.
I do remember this.
Yeah. What happened to him, he was taking a lot of testosterone. That's why he was so angry. But he ended up getting a brain tumor. Now, usually neurons don't reproduce. You don't get tumors in the neurons, but you have the cells that are supporting their neurons. He ended up getting a brain tumor. So that's a good example of the benefits don't outweigh the risk. Even if, out of our 13,999 patients do well, but one gets a tumor or cancer, is it worth it? No. Yeah. It's not. So that's a good, I get that question all the time. Well, why don't you give human growth hormones? One, it costs a lot of money. Two, do you really know if you're going to get it, if you're getting that? And three, what do you monitor? How do you know? I leave it up to endocrinologist, sports medicine doctor or something. And as you get older, it gets more problematic because that's what happens. Our cells start waning or decreasing the ability to repair DNA and cells and all that.
Odd question.
Yeah.
Women's breast milk, does that have human hormones in it? I've heard of people taking that.
Does breast milk have human growth hormone?
Yeah.
I've seen research, then there's been stuff on it. I'm not sure, but I do know that there is a hormone in our pituitary gland that does come out and it does produce it. It's called prolactin. And that's something that the women, that's where the breast tissue comes from. Yes, there's other things in our body that gives nutrients to the baby, but human growth hormone, I've never really seen it a
I've
really
heard
good
of guys
part
taking
of
it that work out.
Yeah. So there's so babies, because they're developing, don't have the ability to produce antibodies. They're still developing. So there's in the breast milk, there are antibodies that the mom transfers to the baby that are protective. There's lots of nutrients, glucose or sugar, proteins for development. Those are the most important things. Yeah. Guys take it because, they think,
I want the good stuff.
I want the good stuff.
Usually when women are pregnant, I'm nursing school. I remember one of our teachers said, they're like little vipers. They're killing you. You have a disease. They're taking everything from you. That's what's happening when you're pregnant for 9 months. Mm-hmm. They're taking everything, all your nutrients, and that's why it's so important.
It's like a parasite.
A parasite, exactly. She's like, it's killing you. It's a disease for 9 months. I'm like, oh, well, I don't have kids then. Just kidding. But I'm like, oh, really? Yeah. And she's like, but that's why, you're tired. You have all these things, why you have to eat healthy, why they say in different trimesters you need to up your protein. You need to do all these things because the baby needs more and it's taking more from you. Mm-hmm. That could even be your hormones. It's circulating all the way through.
Hayden, talk about the female perspective on hormone replacement therapy.
It's kind of the same, don't you think? Yeah. I mean, it does the same thing. It helps with low libido. That's a big thing women kind of come into. They're like, oh, when you get older, women lose their libido. So do guys, but women usually do more. And it's earlier on, 30, they're like, I don't want anything to do with my husband. That's kind of a thing to do with testosterone too. It can help with the mechanics of the body. Right. It helps with reverse the osteoporosis, redo all the skeletal muscle. It kind of builds that back up. Women start to get body fat. Obviously, we're higher in estrogen. We get fat quicker as we get older. Menopause, especially. It helps with that too.
Sleep. Talk about sleep.
It helps a lot with sleep. I can tell you that much. I'm on it too, and I really do like the aspect of sleep. I notice my workouts are better, and we have a harder time building muscle, obviously. girls aren't as masculine as guys. And girls think that if they take testosterone, they're going to get huge and buff. It's not this. No, it's not. It depends how you utilize it. And I love it. I do. I think it's great for women.
And are you guys only checking testosterone levels in women, or are you
No.
guys checking, what are you guys checking in women?
We check a lot of things in women.
Women are a lot more
Yeah,
complicated.
we are.
Yeah.
We have our estrogen, our progesterone, which is really big. Like we said, estrogen kind of goes up and down. We check the thyroid a lot too.
Yeah, thyroid.
Thyroid is
Because
a big
like
one.
she said, when you're pregnant, the mom's heart's beating for the baby. It's circulating the blood. Their thyroid, all their hormones, and so
Thyroid's
what
a big part in the
Especially
yeah,
women.
It is a big thing in women. I mean, women get tired really quick, the fatigue. I mean, my mom, for example, before, she'd go to bed at 8 o'clock. We get tired. We're just like, we're done. We're done with the day. It helps with all of that. When I went to nursing school, I started working here. I think it was Kaylee. It was like, you should try it and just see. I was tired all the time. I had no libido. I had no want, just kind of like you. I'd go home, I'd sleep. I didn't want to go out and have fun with my friends. I started doing it. I didn't notice really a lot. And then when I talked to Wes, he's like, how was your sleep? I'm like, oh yeah, it's good. It's better. How are you? I mean, I gained a lot of weight in nursing school because all you do is eat, you don't sleep, and you stay up and you kind of feel like crap.
study.
Study.
She just ate and slept. That's all she did.
That's all I did
And
for
study.
2 years. And I just thought, maybe it was just over 2 years span. I just kind of screwed myself and I needed to catch up on sleep. No, it was more my hormones were out of balance. I think my testosterone was 11 when it came back? Yeah. That's super low. My estrogen was pretty high, so I'm more estrogen dominant, so I have to watch that too. But I mean, honestly, testosterone stuff with my periods, I'm not as heavy. I don't cramp anymore, and it's actually nice.
Do you guys feel like you can get away with sleeping less doing this? Because I can get away with doing 6 hours and I feel fine the next
Well,
day.
everybody's different. Right?
Everyone is different.
Yeah, everybody's different, but it not only helps your sleep, your quality of sleep, the deep sleep. They talk about REM and all that. It's very complicated, right? So even if you're sleeping well before, it helps the stages of sleep and the memory consolidation and the resting and the reposing.
Yeah.
And that's why you
If
sleep
If
deeper.
you're sleeping deeper, you're getting a lot more rest. So before you weren't getting hardly any rest. Well, now you're sleeping 6 hours with good rest.
And I wake up and I feel
wake up-
great.
Yeah. And a lot of times when you have to take like Ambien or Benadryl or whatever, you kind of feel groggy. You have a lot of side effects.
Yeah.
So, that's a major thing we focus on. Sometimes it's sleep hygiene, right? Like, are you setting yourself up? Are you looking at your phone? Are you
And that's a big one too, is the cellular, like the cell phones, everything. That's so the distractions, sleeping with your TV on. You're not going to get as deep sleep because your body's not shutting down completely. It's still listening. Your brain's on. It's listening around and doing all that too.
So think about our ancestors. Let's say 1,000 years ago, we're working on a farm. And
Circadian rhythms.
and it's dark and it's cold and you have to get up in 6 hours to go work hard. What do? You go to sleep. Now it's like, I take some caffeine. I'm looking at my phone, the TV's on. Like we're not built for that,
So true. I grew up on a farm. Dad had us working.
Nice.
Shoveling grain all day. Boy, when you hit the sack, you're dead.
You're dead. You want to go to sleep.
I did that over the summer. My grandpa had a farm too, and we'd always go up there. And I would just remember just being, it was like 8 o'clock, and he's like, "Okay, it's ready for bed." And I'm like, I'm so done. I'm so tired. But it's nice though. You're just tired. You go to bed.
You wake up and you're like, oh.
You're like, I'm ready to go at 4 a.m. What's up? Yeah, you just feel better.
And that goes back to those tribes where they're moving. And when you don't move, it's called akinesiology. If you don't move mentally and physically, a lot of people, they grew up during Depression and the World War II, and they think when they retire, it's time to sit on the couch and rest. And what happens? They deteriorate physically and mentally because if you don't have something pushing up against you, your body's gonna, just deteriorate. A good example is when astronauts used to go to the space station for a year. They would check their bone density. It's called the DEXA scan. And after a year, when they came back, they exercised twice a day. They try to mimic gravity. But when they came back, they had something called osteopenia. Their bone density decreased. Why? Because they don't have that. Our bodies go, I don't need to maintain this energy to maintain all this bone, right? So it's important to know that you have to keep moving, you have to be motivated and do something. And another thing about exercise is I talk to a lot of patients who are like, I walk on the treadmill or I run. And I go, do you like that? And they're like, no, I hate it. I go, You got to pick something you enjoy. I tricked myself into exercising.
Exactly. And some women that start testosterone, I mean, there's been a few where they do DEXA scans and they'll see their muscle mass go up, and we kind of bloat a little bit because the muscle is swelling. And women are like, they're like, oh, well, I feel like I'm getting fat. I'm like, just give it a couple of months and you'll see. And then they start to slim down. That's the big thing I think women have about testosterone. They're like, I feel like I'm bloating and I feel like I'm going to start like getting like a man voice, which I've never heard that. That's in low, like high doses.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you talking about? But a lot of women that do start, they're kind of hesitant. Their husbands are like, come on, go try it. Yeah. They talk to me and Sarah and they're like, oh, okay, like cool. But, you know, I think it's just when they see Ageless Men's Health, they think it's a men's clinic and not a women's clinic.
Yeah,
and
that's what I thought when I first came in.
So here's the cool thing. So women and men are so different. And women are, I try to tell guys, especially younger guys, women are so much tougher than we are. They have to go through so many more things than we do. But I think of it this way. In order for men to feel loved, they need to be intimate. In order for women to be intimate, they need to feel loved. That's so opposite, right? How does that ever work? But another thing on top of having, you know, the benefit of the hormones, they have purpose. They're supporting each other. It increases the bond. So it goes back to, it's not only the physical, it's, you know.
The intimate too. But women also, I mean, if you really think about it, women get tired quicker. They feel like they do so much during the day, which some do. I'm not going to say they don't. There's some women that work a lot and there's some women that take care of the home. But they feel like, oh, this is just what happens as I get older. You know, you start to get the body fat, you start to get bigger, you kind of feel like you're slowing down, or you're going to get the osteoporosis, your libido's going to go down, their husband's not happy with them because they look a certain way. It's all based on hormones and how you change it. If it can change your mood, why not do something and try it? I told Wes, if there was a magic pill that would make me feel better last week when I was sick, I would have taken it. So you got to try something and see what the benefit is. If it doesn't work for you, you're going to stop it. Just like you take a multivitamin. You're going to take a multivitamin to get all the benefits of it. If it doesn't work, you switch to a different one.
And we don't put everybody on
No.
testosterone. If they don't qualify, then we always keep in the back of their minds when we're sitting down with them, what else could be going on? And women present so differently than men. They used to do when they did the studies on heart attacks, what did they tell you? Pain up your jaw or clenching and pain down your arm. Well, when women went to the hospital, they missed a lot of them because they don't present that way. They're wired differently. So we have to have a different paradigm and work with a lot of women in order to recognize that.
And we have higher pain stimulus too.
Yes.
We do. Just because of our cramps and stuff. And a lot of people think, oh, my period's so heavy. Like, you know, they go to the doctor. I've had a doctor want to give me something for my period to like stop it or something. And I was like, what? So when we did it, and I just kind of was like, you know, looking at my dose, as I've noticed, as my periods have gone, if you're on too high of a dose, you'll stop your period. So you kind of want to watch, you do need to watch women a little bit more closely and kind of listen to them. But they're more honest. They'll be like, this is what's going on. I don't like this. So we can kind of go back. You want to know when their last period was. So I've noticed that my periods, I used to bleed really heavily, and now I've started to not bleed as much, and it doesn't cramp as bad. So instead of taking Midol like 4 times a day, I don't do that anymore. So it's actually nice. That's the benefit I've noticed for me too. And that's something that I was like, okay, cool. Now I feel better. And I actively feel better on my period, when before I was just like, oh, no one talk to me. No one speak to me. I'm done. So I've actively
still
felt
like
better.
that sometimes.
And there's a weird phenomena. There's a weird phenomena with women. If you don't know about this, if there's 4 women working in the clinic, there's a dominant female, and the other women periods will sync up.
I'm the dominant one in our practice.
Yeah. It happens.
It
in
does.
Guinea
We're
pigs.
like
It happens.
we're
in
like
females.
Bluetooth. We like sync up to each
It's
other.
crazy,
And
that
we
tells
all are
you.
on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
It's funny. Like
I think
it's
I
funny,
even am on the cycle. too.
you have to be.
He's like, oh no, it's this week. I'm just grumpy now. Dang it. But I think, we're all on it. Me, Sarah, Trudy, we're all on the testosterone, and I feel actively like we're more happier since we've started that. We don't want to. Before, me and Sarah would be like, we're gonna duke this out. But now we sit down and we have a conversation. I feel like it's made me relax a little more, when before I was more aggressive. That's, it can happen that way too. And I've had a lot of women patients saying, I've kind of just relaxed and was like, oh, cool, like whatever. Instead of being like, no, we got to fix this right now. It kind of changes that. It elevates your mood, where you're like, oh, this could be worse. It can get better. That's how I view it now too. And a lot of women that come to the clinic do too.
So it's beneficial.
Yes.
I appreciate you guys coming over today. Do you want to say anything more?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say at the beginning I forgot is that the concepts and the treatment we're talking about today is for information. You really should seek somebody who has the knowledge and the experience and the credentialing. Don't, this isn't advice to go out and do anything,
Yeah.
but I think it helps. The biggest thing I wanted to do is educate people, right? And that's what I'm excited about, because there's a lot of even primary care doctors, they have this much on their plate. You can only know so much.
Well, and you don't go to your OBGYN to get treated for upper respiratory infection either. So you kind of have to know which specialty you need to go to and where you need to look. We all collaborate together one way or another. So we just have to figure out how we can all collaborate and come together.
Yeah.
But this is more information.
I'll put a disclaimer on the beginning of the video as well, so people know, like, just.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say is, when I was hired by my first supervising physician, he was seeing the patients of the patients he started seeing when he practiced. He'd been practicing for 30 years. And back in his day, what the doctor said went, because you didn't have Google, where would you find the information? You'd have to go to the medical school, you'd have to find the library, you'd have to find the book, and you'd have to find the chapter that talked about it. Now that we have so much information, there's good and bad. I think my first rule of medicine is trust moms, trust wives, trust intuition. We have it for a purpose, right? And we need to collaborate as practitioners with the patient. We can't know everything, but we have to come together and go, okay, this is how we understand it because we're so complex, right?
And
I think that's very important.
That's where we have like the data, we have the evidence-based practice. There's a lot of people that put a lot of work into looking into evidence-based practice, and that's how we move forward. That's how we've evolved in medical too. I mean, you look at infections, you keep looking at how they've changed over the year to stop the infection. It keeps going. Knowledge never stops.
COVID vaccines.
Exactly. And I'm not going to say anything about that, but I would like to see some more data and statistics on that. That's all.
Yeah, everybody would.
And evidence-based practice on that, please.
We'll not go too far into the code.
Yeah,
we don't want to get kicked off
but there you go.
But no, I appreciate you guys coming over here
We
today.
appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
thank
thanks
you.
for having us.
This is one of our favorite topics to talk about.
information.
Yeah.
And maybe we should do a follow-up in like
That would
6
be
months,
great, yeah.
And then just revisit some things and maybe get some feedback from people if they have questions. I'm
yeah.
always learning stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, there's so much more that goes into what we do too. There's so much more. I mean, you have to come in and talk to him. He'll give you your own little breakdown, your
Every
evaluation.
person's different.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys want to email us, I'll put the email at the bottom. Any questions you guys have, we'll probably meet again with Wes and Hayden here.
Yeah.
But don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys for episode number 6.